President. Please be seated. The court is now back in session, and the floor is handed over to the co-prosecutor to resume the questioning. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want now, Mr. Kanguki, to ask you some questions about the 4 methods of torture that you have previously testified were used at S-21. You have said that the most common form of torture was beatings of the prisoners. What types of instruments or weapons were used to beat the prisoners when they were tortured at S-21?
Mr. Co-prosecutor, regarding the prisoners who were tortured, I did not provide the interrogators with rattan sticks, or I did not buy any rattan sticks to be given to interrogators. It depended on those interrogators to find the sticks by themselves. And during the NAT's control, he preferred using electroshocks or using the manually powered telephone to electrocute the prisoners. And later on, upon the use the power provided from the electricity to electrocute the prisoners from the wall. And as evidence shown at S-21, instruments were used only to frighten the prisoners. This is the statement provided by the interrogator who came to testify before the chamber. I did not provide them with instruments, or I did not buy them any instruments, and perhaps the instruments were later collected by interrogators themselves. However, at the center, some interrogators used the batons, the military batons, and the batons resulted in death of prisoners. So those concerned interrogators were responsible for the death of the prisoners. Later on, I learned that some interrogators used excessive strength by the sticks of weapons, and the torture sometimes resulted in prisoners' death. S-21 never went outside to buy any instruments or rattan sticks to be used by interrogators. They found those sticks by themselves. The plastic bag was used at S-21, and that method was allowed.
Thank you. Just to clarify, you indicated that the interrogators would find rattan sticks themselves. You also mentioned that there were some instruments that were only used to scare the prisoners. What were the instruments that were just used to scare the prisoners?
when I saw them later on, when I was asked to show the places, and then I saw those instruments, and I remembered one instrument among the many instruments there. And that instrument were not used to torture people at that time. It was simply shown just to intimidate or force the prisoners to confess. But it was somehow that kind of intimidation symbol can be said as a form of torture as well. And and that symbol sometimes was used in order to force the prisoner to pay homage or to worship. For example, in the case of the Vietnamese prisoners who were treated as the invader of Cambodian territory and the imperialists. So that's why Nixon said that that symbol did not look like the symbol of Khmer identity, it looked like foreign identity. And then I told David Chandler that it was the symbol chosen by S21. It did not represent the Communist Party of Cambodia. It was simply a symbol to strengthen the prisoners to give confession.
And just so we're clear, the instrument that you saw, I'm gathered during when you went on the reconstruction visit to the Tuol Sleng Museum, what is the instrument? Can you describe it more specifically that wasn't actually used for torture but was used just to scare the prisoners? Can you describe that instrument for us?
I remember that one most clearly. That was the axe with two each, and it was displayed there. And there were also other instruments, for example, the container containing water that prisoners were supposed to be forced their head into that water container, and also the other instruments that were supposed to be used when the prisoners' leg would be hang upside down with their head pointing toward the down direction. That was the idea of NAT.
Thank you. I want to ask you about both a statement that appears in David Chandler's book, Voices from S21, an interview he did of a former interrogator, Ma Meng King, alias Rin. This is at document E3, 1684, Khmer page 00191-985, French 00357-403, English 00192.
President, could you please repeat the document number because the interpreter could not follow it?
No problem, Mr. President. The document number is E3/1684. E3/1684. It's David Chandler's book, Voices from S21. Khmer 00191-985. French 00357 403, English 00192 and this is a quote from David Chandler's interview of a former S-21 interrogator. Quote, Nun, Sreng, and I were taking a break on the top floor of the canteen at S-21. At that time, Nun said, in interrogation group 1, all you hear everywhere is the sound of beatings and people asking prisoners if they are CIA or not. With a question like that, what can anyone answer if some of them don't even know what C stands for? End of quote. And Mr. Witness, I've marked a page from the interrogation notebook, if I can provide that back to the witness, Mr. President.
Yes, you may proceed.
Related to the quote I read from David Chandler's book, if you look in the Pontui S-21 notebook, this is document E3/834, E3834, Khmer 0077493. I've marked that page for you with the pink post-it, Mr. Witness. English 00184-508. There are notes from the interrogators from the 11th of August, 1978, and on that page, one of the notes states the following. Political re-education has forgotten some things, like the problems of beatings being heard outside. My question to you, Mr. Witness, do you remember there being a problem at some point at S-21 with beatings that could be heard from outside? And if you remember, can you tell us a little bit about what you remember about the situation?
Thank you for your question. Talking about the beating up of prisoner and it could be heard outside, this was just an exaggeration. It does not reflect the truth. The scream or the noise as a result from beating up the prisoner will not be heard outside. During the proceeding here, I challenged Chumai. He said that he was interrogated for 12 days and 12 nights. And he did not, I challenged him that at that time he did not reveal that he actually insulted the interrogators during the interrogation. So I want to clarify that the noise or the scream as a result of beating up prisoner during interrogation is not truth. It's just an exaggeration.
Could the screams be heard from inside the prison?
I used to sit down at the curving or sculpture area for many days, and I never heard any scream from inside.
Do you have any explanation or understanding as to why upon Tui's notes from August 11, 1978, talk about the problem of beatings being heard from the outside? Do you have any memory of that?
My apology, could you please give me the EON number of the document?
Yes, it's the same page that is marked with the post-it, and it's Khmer page 000779493. Why is there a reference in their notebook to the problem of beatings being heard outside?
My apology, can I ask a question? Is it 007793? It is the EON in Khmer. Is it that page?
Yes, I believe so. Look, why don't you put that aside? What we'll do in the future now is we'll highlight the reference for you also. So let's put aside the book for now, Mr. Witness. Let me move on to my next document. Mr. President, if I may provide to the witness what is document E3 7426. E3 7426, which contains an annotation on the S-21 confession of a female prisoner, Dan Siyan, from January 1976.
President, yes, you may proceed.
And the reference on the first page of this document, E3/7426, Khmer page 001727772, there is a handwritten note. Is that your handwriting, Mr. Kangakiv?
Yes, it is my handwriting.
And for the record, can you read the note that you wrote that appears on the first page?
Let me read as the following. Ask clearly and precisely, and with the use of average torture, and the purpose is to search for the network. And then indented to another line. Beat he said that he beat her until she stopped saying that she has been to Vietnam to have herself healed of menorrhea and thyroid by her grandmother. As I remember, this document has been presented to me during the investigation stage, and I would like to stand by my statement given during the investigating stage. My feeling at that time and my memory at that time was different from now.
What?
Sorry, can I just interrupt because I have the English translation in front of me, so perhaps we can clarify. The witness said, if I remember correctly, at least in English, average torture was used, while the English translation in front of me appears to say more serious torture must be used. Can we clarify either can you tell us what is correct, or can the interpreters tell us which one is the correct translation?
Yeah, we may need to have the mayor speakers look at that. But in your note, let me ask you what the judge has asked. Does your note say use average torture, or does it say use more serious torture?
Thank you. Let me say it again. It's moderate. I think in English it's called moderate.
We'll follow up with translators on that, Judge Fens. Was torture, in this case beatings, used on both male and female prisoners at S21? Let me answer based on my own knowledge. And in my capacity as the chief of the prison, yes, it was used to both male and female. And there was one thing that made me painful until now. There was a young man who inflicted torture on my teacher. And then I reported to the superior to remove him from the interrogation unit. And then the co-prosecution here asked me, why didn't you kill him? And then I told him that my authority at that time was to report and to remove him, but not to kill him. So I want to emphasize that the practices were used to both male and females. For example, but for female prisoner, I use female interrogators. For example, the wives of Comrade Hui, Comrade Pon. So that's my answer. Mr. President, I'd like to next present to the witness document E3/2475. E3/2475, which contains a report on the interrogation of a cadre from Sector 22, Men Son alias C.
President, yes, you may proceed.
Mr. Witness, if you look at the document, and I've also marked with the post-it the particular part I want to ask you about. For the record, this, again, it is E3/2475, Khmer 00305 6504, English 00836 681 to 82, French 00938 432, and if we could also display that on the screen. This is one of these reports from the interrogators that we were discussing earlier, and the excerpt I want to read to you reads the following, quote, "At first, he refused to talk about his betrayal at all. When our comrade tortured him really strongly, he said he was educated by Ben in March 1970. In October 1970, he was inducted into the CIA. When we brought him for questioning again, he denied everything by saying that what he had said before, he said because the comrade interrogator tortured him so strongly. Now he refuses to say anything. His health is very weak, and it ends saying very harsh torture caused sores on his back." End of quote. This is a report dated 18 August 1977. Who is it that prepared this report, Mr. Witness, that described the use of harsh torture that caused sores on the back of this prisoner?
The person who reported this were both interrogators. So it was Comrade Un and Comrade Hing who reported it. For Comrade Un, he was the team leader.
Thank you. Next, I want to ask you about another method of torture that you've described in your interviews, and that is the use of plastic bags to suffocate prisoners. Who was it that instructed you on that method of torture, the use of plastic bags?
I said a little bit earlier on this aspect. It was from the UN practice. It was used since the time I was in Sector 25. The Vietnamese did not use beating up in their interrogation because this would cause the bruise on the body. So it was implemented since August or September 1970. And since I was in Sector 25, and then later on I was transferred to the Southwest Zone. And one day I met Von Wade, and he said to me that he's very busy. And he told me that the UN also used this technique. And he told me that the UN used the plastic bag to suffocate the person. And he told me about this technique probably in 1972 or 73. Although there was such a principle, I rarely implemented it.
Just to make sure we're clear here, Let me read to you an excerpt from your testimony on the 19th of March 2012, E1/50.1, testimony on that day, 19 March 2012, at 15:40 of the afternoon. I quote, "Vornvet himself instructed me the way to torture those people. The best way he liked, the way that he liked most, was to use a plastic bag to cover the heads of those people. He said, 'You, comrade, need to look at their neck, or rather the pulse at the neck. If it was vibrating very strongly, they would be considered as spies.'" End of quote. What was Vornvet's position at the time he provided this instruction or advice to you on torturing prisoners with plastic bags?
Thank you for your question. I was designated as the chief of M13 on 20 July 1971. Vornvet was the spokesman assigned by the Central Committee to come to promote me. And he was responsible for the overall affairs of the north, the south, Phnom Penh, and other zones. Brother Vaughan was the secretary of that special zone at that time, and that special zone was established after the Fourth Party Congress, and he also established M13, and that name M13 was also chosen by him. And then in 1973, he was assigned to take charge of the army in the south, including Sang, Lek Dai, and at that time, Brother Paul and Sun Sen also came. And for Brother Kyo, that is Kyo Sompon, he was still outside. So I was directly receiving the order from Brother Vornvet since 1971. So it was him who instructed me.
And when you were at M13, did you have plastic bags to use there, or was it only later at S21 that you had plastic bags that you could use to implement this method of torture instructed by Vornvet?
I did not have plastic bags to use at M13. Specifically, I used three French to beat the prisoners, and I never used groma or scarf to put on the prisoners' mouths and then pour the water on the scarf.
Mr. President, if I may now provide to the witness document E3/3847, E3/3847, which contains some notes annotations or comments relating to the interrogation of a group of prisoners.
Yes, please.
And for the record, the specific pages that I'll be referencing in E3 3847 are Khmer ERN 00173-829 through 830, English 00223-916, French 00271-475. And I've marked those pages with Post-its for you, Mr. Witness, to make it easy to find. This document contains some handwritten comments relating to the interrogations of various prisoners. And if we could show this on the screen. Paragraph 2.4 on these pages are notes regarding prisoner Po Lim alias Sit. And the notes say, quote, types of torture: beating with electrical wire and suffocating with plastic bag. And then below that, the notes relating to another prisoner, Pol Sit, paragraph 3.3, state, quote, torture: beating with electric wire and suffocating with plastic bag. After the torture, he agreed to speak about the planning meeting to be convened with Sapun. End of quote. First question, Mr. Witness, do you recognize the handwriting of these notes?
I do not recognize this handwriting, but I would like to give my observation or impression on page 00173829 in Khmer. There is one thing in relation to the handwriting that I would like to make an observation, the initial questions. At the time, the word Dombong was never used in Khmer. That is the initial. The word Tom was never used. The first thing I want to say here is that I do not recognize this handwriting, and the word initial in Khmer was never used. The word Tombo was never used.
Mr. Witness, this document references beatings with electrical wire. What type of wire was used to beat? Is this a reference to physically beating the detainees with electric wire, or are they talking about electroshocks here?
In reality, I can presume that they wrap the electrical wire together and then use it to beat the prisoners. No electroshocks.
And Did the interrogators have electric wire at S21?
There were wires at houses everywhere at the location. They used the wire from those houses and beat the prisoners.
Let me turn to the next method of torture that you've referenced, which is the use of electric shocks. You testified that this was a method of torture that was favored by your predecessor, Nat, your predecessor as chairman of S21. Why did Nat favor this method of torture?
Frankly speaking, in relation to his preference, I cannot tell you about it. He once gave the manually powered U.S. telephone to the cadres to use. Perhaps at the time there were abundant of those telephones. I cannot tell you about his preference.
Witness, don't guess. Don't guess. If you don't know, then say I don't know.
Witness. Thank you, Judge.
Did you see the telephones that were used to give electric shocks to prisoners?
I saw them. The telephones were used for communication inside S21. There was a center at Lycée, Pognagnac Lycée, and the wire was connected to one another, and the telephone was operated by manually powered. Those telephones were used for torture as well.
And do you know when these phones were used for torture? Do you know how they were connected to the bodies of the prisoner? How were the prisoners shocked using these phones?
The wire was attached to each big toe.
And how do you know that?
It was said by others, and perhaps Nat made a mention about that, but I cannot recall it well. I learned from others. People said about it.
Mr. President, at this time I'd like to provide document E3/3841 to the witness. E3/3841, which is a statement, a part of the confession of Soon.
President, you may proceed.
And for the record, the There are two parts that I've marked for you for your review, Mr. Witness. The first is an annotation that appears on Khmer ERN 00172792, 172792. We could show that page on the screen. The English translation 002346676, also 223142. French 0029637. Do you see the annotation on that page? Mr. Kangukiv, is that your handwriting?
Page 00172792, there is an annotation, not confessed yet, exclamation mark, and use torture. The handwriting belongs to me, and that the instruction was given to the instructor for implementation.
And if you turn to the very end of this document, this is Khmer page 00172-863, 172863, and if we can be ready to show that. English 00825-417, French 00955-087. This is a statement from this detainee. Quote, "I felt disappointed at being cursed, beaten, and electrocuted by our comrades. Later on, I felt like committing suicide by hanging because the comrades beat and electrocuted me because I refused to confess my mistakes, like Ankar had explained to me in the beginning." End of quote. Do you recognize, Mr. Witness, first of all, are you able to tell from this document who the interrogator was who interrogated this prisoner?
Based on the writing or handwriting, the interrogator was Pon, Comrade Pon.
Next document, if I may provide to the witness, document E3 1874, E3/1874, which contains a report on the interrogation of a female medic, Uk Saban. With your leave, Mr. President.
President, you may proceed.
And while the witness is looking at it, the specific ERN references here are Khmer 000-84038, English 00821-432, French 008197737. And if we could show that on the screen also. The excerpt that I want to ask you about on the report of the interrogation of this prisoner states, quote, "She was tortured and electrocuted several times. Based upon her biography, she mostly worked with traitors. In addition, she joined the revolution through her brother, Tem, who is now arrested." End of quote. This female prisoner who was tortured with electric shocks, the interrogator here, can you tell us, was this a female interrogator or a male interrogator who used torture on this female prisoner?
The interrogator's name was Paul, the male one. He was one of the comrade interrogator. He kicked the chest of one prisoner from 703, and that prisoner died later on. There was no confession from the later. And I'm now mentioning about the translation of the document. Number 3, this person was partially tortured via electric wire was used, and her biography was that this person was linked to traitor networks. Time was already arrested. She had another brother, Ruan, who was at office Po 98, and that person was already arrested. And the two individuals here were all already arrested, so the Khmer version is a bit different from the translation I heard a while ago. Time was the chief of a telecommunication committee of General Staff, and Sir Ruan was working at Po 98. She had two brothers, as I remember.
Thank you. Two more documents I would like to present to the witness. I'll hand them together. The first is document E3/3844, E3/3844, and the second is E3/7437, E3/7437, with your leave.
President, yes, please.
And while you are taking a look at these documents, Mr. Witness, let me read for the record. The first document provided to the witness is from the confession of Pol Lok Peng, E3/3844, Khmer ERN 00173-598, English 00820-962, French 00869-389, and the reference pages are one of these interrogators' summary reports. let me start with that report first, Mr. Witness, E3 3844. And if we can show this on the screen. The statement in the summary report from the interrogator reads as follows, quote, "I had him put his palms together to salute the wall, the electric wire, and the whip. At the same time, I wrote down words for him to memorize. He was memorizing them for over 1 hour. I showed him the picture of a human with the dog head and told him to salute it simultaneously while he was memorizing the words. He agreed to memorize the words and salute the picture for a long while. I did not recall the time he was doing that, but it was in the morning on the same day. For almost the whole morning, my questions were focused on the period of his schooling, and at the same time, I also whipped him. He then decided to confess." End of quote. Mr. Witness, this report indicates that the interrogator had the detainee salute. I'm not sure if they mean a satu, but they had the detainee bow down or salute the wall, electrical wire, and whip. Can you explain what the purpose was of having the prisoners do that?
The cartoon of a human body with a dog head. I do not know when that practice was used. That image refers to Ho Chi Minh and Nixon. The prisoners were asked to salute the image, the two image, and memorize that, "Oh my goddess," or "my God and goddess."
I understand your testimony about the picture of the dog. This note, though, also indicates that the prisoner saluted the electric wire and the whip. What was the reason for doing that? Were these instruments, wire and whip, kept open so the prisoners could see them when they arrived for interrogation?
The image were shown for the prisoners to pay homage after those prisoners paid homage already to the dog symbol or dog image. That was used, that practice was used.
And the electric wire, the whip that's referenced by this interrogator, did the interrogators keep those in the open so the prisoners could see them when they arrived for interrogation?
It depended on the actual methods used by concerned interrogators. I did not instruct exactly about the actual methods.
Let me read to you the excerpt from the second document I handed to you. This is E3/7437, at Khmer 00173 742 through 743, English 00780-892, French 00800-851. This is related to the interrogation or confession of Su Heng, and it's a report, one of these summaries titled Clarification Report. And it states, if we can show on the screen, quote, I told him to prostrate himself before the image of the two dogs. At first, he did not follow my command, but after some beating, he agreed to admit that he was a traitor. Yet he did not tell me about his traitorous networks. I then electrocuted him several times, and I talked about politics to confuse him. He then agreed to tell me about his CIA networks. End of quote. My question to you, Mr. Witness, both of these, the last two interrogator reports, confession reports that I provided to you were from July 1978. The one I just read is dated 18 July 1978. Who was the superior to whom you reported in July 1978?
I lost personal communication. I did not personally communicate with Sun Sen from 15 August 1978. I no longer contacted him one-on-one. And from that time onward, the 15 August 1977, I sent reports to Pradan Nguyen.
Just to be clear then, the date, the time of these reports was the time that you were reporting to and sending documents to Noon Chea. Is that correct?
That is correct. President, it is now time for the lunch break. The court will take lunch break from now until 1:30 p.m. Security personnel are instructed to bring Kiew Sompon and the witness to their respective awaiting rooms. And please bring Kiew Sompon into the courtroom before 1:30 p.m. And as for the witness,